This podcast is hosted by Yakap PH. Our organization upholds justice for persons deprived of liberty by normalizing their humane image, being a reputable source of information that shall enlighten the society about the current climate and condition of the Philippines carceral or justice system, conducting activities that will ease the PDL's dire and stifling situations, and by generally speaking in behalf of them. Hi everyone, I'm Camille Andres and I'll be your host for today's episode. This third podcast activity complements Inside the Carceral, a podcast to humanize persons deprived of liberty. The general podcast of the organization, actually. This ought to answer why there is a need to accentuate rehabilitation rather than incarceration, how it affects the general positioning of PDLs towards a life of freedom in the future, and how necessary it is to craft a law and policy for these issues. Through this episode, we expect to learn the legal matters bounding our incarceration system and what could be the laws that talk about this. What could our legislators do for this seeming issue? Our speaker for today is one of the greatest thinkers of his generation. As early as 15 years old, he joined the human rights movements against the Marcos dictatorship and was imprisoned by former President Marcos at the age of 18. During that time, he experienced severe and horrendous torture for 4 years. But the incident did not stop him. He continued to fight for our country's human rights and later on became one of the founding council of Bayan Muna during 1999. He is a human rights lawyer and was the senior deputy minority leader of the 16th Congress during his 3 terms as a member of the House of Representatives. With his experience, pinapatunayan lamang niya nakakampi ka niya sa laban. Without further ado, let's all welcome our guest, Sir Nery Colmenares. Yan. Good
Hi,
day, sir.
good day Camille at saka Justin at sa lahat po ng viewers ng podcast ninyo.
Thank you so much po for being here with us at Yaka PH Podcast. So, how are you doing today, sir?
Fine. I just came from a meeting and I rushed home kasi sabi ko baka ma-traffic pa. But good enough. I arrived home mga 15 minutes ago. No? So okay, I'm medyo nakapag-freshen up ng konti for the podcast.
Ay, ramdam naman po. Thank you so much po. And don't worry
Yes.
po, attorney. Talagang kitang-kita naman po na fresh tayo today. So, actually, attorney, I'm happy and grateful that you've given us your time to share your thoughts for today's episode. Because here at Yaka PH, we believe that this topic is not being talked about that much, and of course we want to hear your thoughts on these issues. And for starters po, Attorney Nery, I just want to give our listeners a glimpse of our current situation right now in connection to our topic, because in Manila City Jail, the ideal capacity should be 1,100 inmates based on United Nations minimum standard. But right now, according to BJMP, it is up to 7,000 inmates, and that is almost 700 capacity. The war on drugs by Duterte's administration plays a big role on this congestion percentage. And we cannot deny the fact that this is an outcome as well of a struggling legal system where court hearings moves at a snail's pace. And just to go back also with my statement, Attorney Neri, you experienced also the life inside as well. So being imprisoned and being a victim as well of torture during the martial law era as early as 18 years old, how did that change you?
Well, actually, it opened my mind to a lot of things, no? Other than human rights, which we were advocating for when I was very young. I started being a human rights activist when I was in high school, but it also opened my mind to the fact that hindi lang pala sa labas ng prison, kundi sa loob ng prison itself, grabe rin yung human rights violations. I'm not just the torture that is normal doon sa mga prisoners, whether political prisoners like me, because I was arrested on the fact that I dissent. No, I was a dissenter.
Mhm.
But the others who are common, quote unquote, common criminals, yeah, they get charged with theft or robbery or something. They also get tortured in a sense, as a matter of course. So yeah, it opened my mind to a lot of things. So prison advocacy was reform. Prison reform advocacy was also one of my advocacies when I was in Congress. And in fact, during budget hearings, we really fought hard for increased budget for food. No? Kasi sa loob ng prison, when I was in prison, I still remember that we had 8 pesos per day as budget for each detainee. And so I
Ah,
spent
okay.
four years of my life in prison. So that means 3 pesos for what? 2 pesos for breakfast, 3 pesos for lunch, 3 pesos for dinner. But 8 pesos per day. But minsan may corruption dyan. So magiging 7 pesos per detainee na lang yan, per prisoner. Tapos syempre, ang caterer, kikita rin siya. So sabihin mo, kumuha rin siya ng piso. Nakita niya for every day ng ano. So, ang matira sa 6 pesos. So, I mean, how can you eat 6 pesos per day na pagkain? So,
Mm-mm.
we always advocated for that in Congress, and many other reforms on prison systems, including of course the philosophy of penology, wherein I know Yakap is a very main proponent yung issue ng rehabilitation
Yes.
over the other philosophies ng penology, which is retribution, preventive, deterrence, and so on and so forth.
I see. And just to go back as well, Sir Neri, kasi ang bata nung namulat ka sa ganitong sitwasyon na you really have to fight for our rights as well during that time. How was it dun naman sa parents mo? Ano po yung reaction nila? Like, syempre, bata pa po kayo that time. Meron po bang pag-aalma? Meron po ba silang, syempre, I know, bilang magulang, hindi
Yes,
mawawala dun po yung worry.
yes.
Up, did they support you po ba during that time?
Very, very supportive yung parents ko. No?
Mm.
Of course, syempre gulat yung parents ko na pag makita nila anak nila, 18-year-old, tapos mukha ko basag-basag. I mean, 18-year-old to torturein mo. I mean, what kind of a government are you? You torture 18-year-old
Mm.
kids, di ba? So they were so surprised na may mga basag akong lips, may, alam nila na to torture ako. And then, yung prison namin dati kasi, ano yan isang parang ganito kalaki. Walang kwarto, May karton ka lang, ilagay mo lang doon sa semento, and then matulog ka doon. Wala kang kama, wala anything. Tapos may isang ilaw lang siya. Ha? And I like to read when I was in high school. I was 18 years old. Of course, you like to read. So I had to go, most of us, yung mga aktivistang nakukulong, we had to go to that corner na kung saan may siguro di 10-watt bulb na, yung yellow, yung mahina na klaseng ilaw. Tapos doon kami magbabasa paggabi. So, really difficult. Tapos mamaya papatayin ng ilaw, madilim na. Pag umuulan, mababasa ka. Kasi umaanggi yung ulan sa mga rehas sa taas So, kung may pera yung parents mo, makapagdala sila ng unan at kumot. Pag wala, di talagang sa karton ka lang matutulog. Malamig yung semento paggabi, so you suffer cold nights. Many, many. And to think we are not convicts, di ba? So medyo yung parents ko. Kasi kaya lang, martial law noon so people are afraid. So they just kept silent na lang. But they did support me. Dadala ng ulam, encouraging words. And they really fought na ma-release ako doon sa legal system. I hired a lawyer, or at least got a lawyer for me. Kawawa naman yung iba, wala talagang
Yung wala
lawyers.
talagang
Yeah.
kakayanan para
Yeah.
mailabas man lang sila sa ganung sitwasyon. And Sir Neri, ngayon syempre, alam naman nating lahat na napakadaming prisoners sa iisang jail na as in congested na talaga sila. So, during your time po ba, ilan po ba kayo doon?
Well, ang sa amin, at the time, hindi kasing congested ng Manila kasi I was in the province hindi ganun well, in a way congested na rin yon. Kasi siguro sa maliit na na lugar, siguro mga 30, 40 ka tao. If you imagine yung sala namin, kala mo malaki. Pero actually, pag 40 ka tao dyan, hirap na kayo dyan. Lalo na pag matulog kayo, you occupy more space, di ba? So yeah, very difficult times. Pero ang congestion rate sa Pilipinas ngayon, mas grabe. Kaya
Yeah,
during the
700 over congestion nga
percent,
po.
yeah, yes, yes. Ang national average ata is about 570% congestion rate. I mean, national, meaning i-average mo na lahat ng mga provincial jails, city jails. Oh my God, that's 200% lang nga, doble na yun. How much more pag 500% plus? I used to have clients sa Quezon City Jail noon when I was, practicing. Hindi pa ako congressman. So, yeah, grabe. Hindi sila, yan, yung hindi sila makatulog kundi salitan sa tulog. So, really cruel and unjust punishment na parusahan ka na nga ng prison term na 10, 15 years. How much more yung horror at torture na every night, every day nasasuffer ng prisoner. Parang doble ang punishment
Mm.
sa kanya in that sense.
Kaya talagang namulat kayo and na-push lalo, imbis na panghinaan ng loob, talagang lalo nabuo yung loob nyo na maging isa pa sa mga magagaling naming human rights lawyer. And being a human rights lawyer, of course, Attorney Neri, for you as well, what do you think is the incarceration in the Philippines jail context? And how risky is it? Especially now during our times na, yun nga, intaran na rin yung mga COVID and parami na rin talaga ng parami yung tao sa loob.
Well, generally, even before COVID, grabe ng kalagayan ng ating prisons, no? But complete
True.
violation yan ng UN minimum standards for the treatment of prisoners. Complete violation. Under section, marami. Marami akong mababanggit ng mga rules. But sige na, the Rule 18 halimbawa, on accommodation and health services. Wala yan. I mean, accommodation, wala kayong dapat healthy accommodation. Yung mga, so many things, sanitation, tubig, wala yan. Maraming jails, walang ganyan. All this in violation, of course, of the minimum standards ng United Nations. Technically, that's the problem. Now comes COVID. COVID, nagiging doble ang risk. May risk na nga doon, may namamatay na before due to, pag may TB yung isa, may TB ka rin, di ba? Tuberculosis
Yes.
or whatever infectious disease. Ngayon, nadagdagan ng COVID, which is more, more contagious. So that's why we even filed a petition, kami ng mga ilang human rights lawyers. We filed a petition before the Supreme Court at the start of last year, 2020. I think it was probably about May or June of last year na nag-file kami ng petition sa Korte Suprema na because of COVID and the danger na in-expose yung prisoners. Kasi under the minimum standards, Camille, you cannot expose a prisoner to life-threatening situations, di ba? A life-threatening situation ito. So, decongest prison para, walang tubig dyan, walang sabon. So, lahat ng mga wash your hands, social distancing, wala yan sa prison. How can you wash your hands? Walang tubig. Kung may tubig, walang sabon, di ba? So, lahat yan, we filed a case na sana yung mga light offenses, yung elderly and sick, i-release na from prison. O, pwede silang ilagay sa isang facility na separate but not in prison terms. Pero hindi na-grant ng Korte Suprema, the government opposed it, the Office of the Solicitor General opposed it. Hanggang ngayon, pending yun. But nababakunahan na siguro ang lahat next year, hindi pa ma-resolve yung petition na yan. But anyway, so hindi nag-grant eh. But anyway,
I see.
Yeah, very dangerous at risky talaga sa prison, lalo na ngayong may COVID.
And I think it's really great, Attorney, na you mentioned also that there is a lot talaga. Kasi not all of us also are aware, not unless talaga magre-research ka or you'll give some time para magbasa. And it's a good thing also na talagang binanggit mo na there is a law pertaining sa safety also ng mga prisoners. And ngayon, kahit kami, iniisip namin na lalo nung COVID, kung dito mismo nahihirapan na magkaroon ng social distancing, what more doon sa mga congested areas doon sa loob. And kung kaya nga rin naman talaga na maipalaya agad, yun nga yung sana magkaroon ng mga mabilisang usad yung mga trials, magawa na rin sana kasi isa talaga siya sa nagiging reason why nagkakaroon ng congestion sa loob. Which also leads us to one thing which is yun nga, rehabilitation. For you also, Attorney Neri, why is there a need to prioritize rehabilitation over incarceration?
Siyempre, Camille, yung unang tanong ng mga nakikinig sa atin minsan, bakit naman i-rehabilitate? Bakit naman i-release? Eh, may crime siyang ginawa eh. That goes back
Yes.
to the philosophy. No? I don't need to detail it. Pero yung original philosophy, many centuries ago, is the retribution policy. No? The punishment must fit the crime. An eye for an
Yes.
eye. Patay ka,
Tooth
therefore
for
patayin
tooth.
ka rin, di ba?
Yes.
Na later on naging outmoded yan kasi depende yan eh kung if you fit the crime eh kung may mentally deficient yung isa o kung yung isa ay crime of passion na napatay niya no o kaya ang isa poverty driven napatay niya so hindi pwedeng pare-pareho na you know kaya pumatay siya therefore patayin mo rin parang wala nang consideration sa mitigating factors di ba so na outmoded na yung retribution kasi it's a vengeance type of penal philosophy dapat gagmumanti kami, di ba? Na ang sabi
Yes.
ng karamihan, even the Christians, even the Muslims, even all the religions around the world would say na ang forgiveness part at saka, yung rehabilitation is part. Pero ano dyan, yung deterrence philosophy later on na sinabi nila, hindi, ginagawa yan para ma-deter sila na ang finding hindi nakaka-deter. No? So yung death penalty law, for example, na may findings na no 1999, merong atang 6 o 7 execution under President Estrada, but the crime rate increased. Increased, despite the 6 to
Mm.
7 executions. So hindi deterrence pala yung penalty. So ang problema pa diyan sa penalty, katulad ng death penalty, wala nang appeal yan. And I remember there was a Supreme Court decision in Mateo versus People na na-find ng Korte Suprema na out of 995 na cases na death penalty, ang almost 651 na kaso doon ay hindi death. So 7 out of 10
Mm.
ay hindi death. Pero kung hindi lang na-review ang kaso nila, 7, di yung patay yung 700 na yun,
Hindi
di ba?
biro din yung number na yun, yes.
Correct, yes. And when I graduated in law, naghihintay ako ng bar. I was not yet a lawyer. Nag-apply ako as intern sa isang law firm. I still remember this kay Attorney Leo Agustin. And doon, mayroong isang death penalty case na binigay niya sa akin. Sabi niya, Neri, you write the appeal. Kasi pro bono, walang lawyer yung convict. Inaano ako na, pro bono, walang bayad. You just help. So anyway, I drafted the appeal. Kama yung taong to, may tricycle driver siya, so may sumakay sa kanya na 2 pasahero. Tapos tinutusan siya, pumunta doon sa pawn shop. Pagdating sa pawn shop, sabi sa kanya, you wait for us. Tapos yung 2 pa lang yun, nag-raid doon sa pawn shop, pinatay, binaril yung may-ari ng pawn shop na babae, matanda. Tapos nung tumakas sila, sumakay sila sa tricycle, nagpahatid sila somewhere. Tapos yan. Tapos hinuli rin siya, nahuli rin yung 2. Nahuli rin siya later, tapos pati siya death penalty. So
akala ko, please.
Nag-appeal ako na yan reasonable doubt ba yan? Nagda-drive siya ng tricycle, malay nyo kung kakutsaba siya o hindi, di ba? Nakulong na siya for a long time. Anyway, I drafted the appeal, pero dahil hindi pa naman ako abogado, I didn't sign it. Si Attorney Agustin nag-sign. Tapos 1 year later, I left the law firm na later on kasi naging lawyer na ako. He called me up, Attorney
Great.
Agustin, said, congratulations, you saved you saved a person from prison. So can you imagine that? Kasi wala siyang pera, wala siyang abogado. He was convicted for a crime na kahit law student pala could have acquitted him. I mean, kung lawyer niya ako sa trial, di na-acquit na sana siya doon pa lang, di ba?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Pero dahil wala naman siyang abogado, siguro may abogado siya, tulong-tulong sa kanya, libre-libre naman yun, so hindi masyadong bigay ng atensyon. So that you can imagine na ang death penalty, walang appeal, pero hindi naman siya nakakadeter, pero maraming namamatay. So yun yung palagi kong sinasabi sa mga kasamahan ko sa Kongreso, yung penalty trap, yung sinasabi ko na for every issue sa crime, ang tendency niya is to increase the penalty. So retributive sila mag-isip Retributive sila mag-isip or deterrent for that matter. Na findings na yun sa buong mundo, hindi yan totoo. Anyway, increase, may pinatay, may ni-rape, na gano'n. O di death penalty lahat, parang very Very instant ba ang kanila? O gawing doblehin ng penalty. Sabi ko, kahit doblehin yung penalty, triplehin nyo, if the if the criminals know they can get away with it, bayaran mo si piskal, bayaran mo si judge, bayaran mo si police, bayaran mo si investigador, you get away with it, edi it will not deter. In fact, ang tatamaan dyan yung mahirap. Pero pag mayaman ka, you can pay everybody.
Na walang
So,
laban, yes.
hindi ma-achieve yung purpose ng penology philosophy mo, rehabilitation, yun ang talagang pinaka. And of course, the more advanced is restorative justice. But let's just go to the rehabilitation. Huwag muna tayo sa advance kasi rehabilitation is actually the penal philosophy natin sa Pilipinas that is imbued in many of our laws. 10590 RA 10592. Yung dyan, conduct, good conduct law. Yung even the manuals of BJMP and the corrections facilities, manual nila sinasabi rehabilitation yung purpose ng penology, hindi to punish, revenge, hindi deter, etc. Look at the name, Bureau of Corrections. Even that is already an admission that they believe na rehabilitation ang philosophy. But the way people think, the way all these leaders think, and including President Duterte, no, but you drug addict ka, patay ka. Look at the drug addict problem. Now, in the Philippines, there is a death penalty law. Well, it's not a law, but there's a death penalty na pag-addict ka, most likely patay ka. Did it deter drug addiction? Did it deter drugs? Grabe pa rin yung mga drugs. So, I really feel that it's about time na we walk the talk. Ang talk kasi, rehabilitation, pero ang walk hindi eh. Patayin ka,
Ba ang
tulog ka,
nangyayari?
Iba. So, dapat, kung rehabilitation ng philosophy, let's try that. Kasi ang concept naman ng rehabilitation, to rehabilitate the criminal para paglabas niya, meron siyang papel sa society na useful siya at hindi na siya babalik sa krimen. So, yun naman yun. And to think na ang factors kasi sa judiciary, corrupt, very slow, very, wala kang abogado, hindi accessible.
Yes.
Ang dami talagang makukulong dyan na unjust. And rehabilitation is one way to ensure na whether you were justly, lalo na pag unjustly imprisoned ka, you at least have the chance to be a better person when you go out. Sa ngayong kalagayan, no, I've seen that in prison. Not only when I was in prison, but when I was a lawyer for prisoners, there's no way they can rehabilitate themselves. This system does not allow for it. In fact, pagpasok mo, nagnakaw ka ng cellphone, paglabas mo, magnanakaw ka na ng mas mahal pa. Tumataas yung criminal instinct mo kaysa sa nare-rehabilitate ka, which is a problem also for all people and the whole society. Pag bawat criminal na pinapasok mo for a petty crime, paglabas niya, serious crime na yung gagawin niya, lalong naging lumalang problema. That's why Yakap's advocacy for rehabilitation is better than the other penal philosophies which did not work anyway for many countries around the world.
Yes, sir. We really do want to push that as well kasi nakita namin na isa sa key factor para umayos talaga yung tao is yung environment niya dahil ang laki ng impact nun. Even bata pa lang tayo, malaki na yung sinasabi nila sa atin na malaki yung impact or yung ambag sa'yo talaga ng environment mo and how you think and how you act as well. And you mentioned rin po also, Attorney Neri, a while ago regarding Dunsalo. And we're just really curious po and we want to know those details regarding this one. Just to ask lang din po, is there a law or a policy also that needs a notion for rehabilitation on jails or prison po? And if yes, what are those? And if you have any suggestions pa po na pwedeng mabuo towards this.
Well, even the revised penal code recognizes good conduct. Diba? May ganun naman yan sa revised penal code. They passed the good conduct law, RA 10592 nga, na kung saan may ganun. So, anong steps dyan? For good behavior, you get 15 days of your time. Halimbawa, good behavior ka, o kaya nag-aral ka, nagbasa ka, may technical training sa prison, you went there. For every month you go there, mababawasan ng 15 days ang sentensya mo. So those are good. No? It encourages people to be more, hindi manggulo, etc. So, nagka-problema yun kasi nagkaroon ng corruption, nagkaroon ng palakasan. So, the deserving prisoners do not get the good conduct pass pag hindi sila malapit doon sa boards, sa
Ng
prison
padrino system,
authorities.
yes.
Correct. Kaya yung mga lumabas na naman yun ng kay Mayor Sanchez kasi he violated so many laws. May nakuhang shabu sa prison niya, may nakuhang mga air condition at mga TV sets sa kanyang prison. So many violations. In fact, nag-test siya positive for drug abuse. But still, he got the good conduct pass. Why? Ang nakalagay kasi sa batas for good behavior. So bakit? May palakasan, may corruption. But the law is good sana. So ang
Yes.
solusyon diyan is kailang ang reaction ng lahat, pati si President Duterte, walang laro, walang i-release. Pat yung i-penalize yung tao na nag-good behavior over the mistake of some prisoners na. So yun yung isang law, no? Yung good conduct pass. Sana i-enhance yun. No? I mean, ito yung tanong ha. Ang sentensya niya 20 years. For 14 years siya nakakulong, good behavior siya. So on the 15th year, nag-good conduct siya, di nalabas na siya. Can you still say na masamang tao yan? I mean, for 14 years, kahit sino sa atin, for 14 years, it's very difficult naman na good conduct ka, di ba? You make
Yes.
mistakes, di ba? Pero ito, he or she surpassed it So, give him or her a chance na. Hindi ko congest, wala nga tayong pakain sa kanila Kulang nga ang budget Di congested pa nga yung, di congest mo na, di ba? There's so many advantages pag i-good conduct mo siya. So that's one. So, ako, strengthen that and make it impervious to corruption at discretion ng mga prison authorities. Yun naman ang solusyon Huwag ihinto.
Yes.
Secondly, may minimum UN minimum standards. We're signatories naman to that, di ba? The Bureau of Corrections na sabi ko, lahat naman ng manuals nila, rehabilitative yung philosophy nila. So, pag-implement niyan. Kaya nga, Congress should exercise its oversight function doon sa mga prison authorities. Bakit? Ang problema, kasi nitong COVID, kung for some reason, ito nga ang problema kay President Duterte. Ako, I have to be frank here. One of the most incompetent presidents we've ever had. Wala talagang alam sa COVID. He treated a health emergency like a peace and order issue. It's not a peace and order issue. It's a public health emergency. Pag lumabas ka, kulong ka. Ang dami. Thousands. In fact, there was a report noon na during kasagsagan ng COVID last year, a total of 120,000 arrests. Congested na ang prison. Hindi naging laboratory for COVID yon. Kasi inuli mo siya sa labas, malay mo, may COVID siya, pinasok mo siya sa loob. May mga namatay na nga ng mga prisoners, di ba? So, for me, yung mag-oversight function dyan paano ma-decongest ito at hindi dagdagan. At mayroon kami, for example, recognizance law. May recognizance law kami sa bill, no? At hindi naman yan na pasa-pasa, pero recognizance will grant na hindi na kulong yung mga light offenses to the custody na lang yan ng mga well-respected persons like bishops or priests or some upright community person para saves government money. Yung tao naman light offense, may penalty naman siya pero under recognizance siya, yung ganon. So we have bills like that But we don't even need to go to a new law. Yun ang sabi ko, law trap Just implement this and make sure na hindi siya nasasalian ng corruption na ganon. So maybe enhancing the good conduct law and then secondly, support siguro dun sa recognizance bill namin sa bayan muna. And then, of course, yung pag-ensure na ma-oversight, not only with regards to our laws, but also with regards to the UN minimum standards. When I was an author of the anti-torture law, at sa anti-torture law, I was saying na any form of physical or mental suffering na ini-impose mo sa isang tao is torture. And one of the things na kinwestiyon nila dyan, ang prisoner ba makukonsider yan? So para sa akin, of course, it's torture. Pag ikaw ba naman ikulong dyan na hindi ka makatulog sa gabi for kung ilan man yung 2 taong ka dyan, torture yun, di ba?
At the end of the day, tao pa rin naman talaga sila.
Correct. Correct. So, sa kanila, no, 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 dapat, so naglagay sila ng exception dun sa batas na pag ganyan, katulad ng, prison, hindi yan sakop sa torture law. So, anyway, I was outvoted there. So, nalagay yan sa batas ngayon sa anti-torture law na torture, but not the legal sanctions ng government like itong sa prison na. But yeah, those are the laws na pwede yung pero siguro yung advocacy rin na pagpaliwanag sa tao na yung ating concept na an eye for an eye,
Yes.
it doesn't work, and it is really more inhumane kasi it started with the Judeo-Christian concept noon pa man eh. So
Mm.
it's really inhumane na for people who, whether you're religious or not religious, hindi siya talaga magandang philosophy ang yan. So, yung mga, okay lang yan, addict naman yan, patayin na. That must be explained to
Yeah.
the people na hindi tama yung ganong klaseng
Yes.
filosofiya dito sa Pilipinas. It exacerbates the problem rather than solves the problem.
Yes, sir. Attorney Neri, I think people are often blinded by the fact na feeling nila talaga pag addict ka or magnanakaw ka, yun na yun, wala na kapupuntahan buhay mo. Kaya dito ang mga mambabatas natin, yung mga government officials natin, and yung ikaw na rin as a person na bibigyan mo sila ng chance, and it's really great na andyan kayo ng bayan muna, you as a human rights lawyer who are really fighting for their rights as well. Hindi siguro dapat natin nakakalimutan na oo, bagamat man may nagawa silang ganito, at the end of the day, tao pa rin naman yung nakikita natin doon. Tao pa rin yung nandun. Ang kailangan lang nating bigyan, tsansa. At yung chance na yun, mabibigyan lang natin pag maayos yung batas, pag maayos yung namumuno, at maayos yung environment na kalalagyan nila. I hope also that people who are listening right now and who are watching the news from time to time will know also the importance ng government natin kung paano i-handle to and how their actions as well will affect not only us also but also yung mga nasa loob ng kulungan na rin, Attorney Neri. And total,
Yes.
nandito na lang din naman po tayo. Can you share also to our listeners right now, also Attorney Neri, regarding the rehabilitation as well, of course, how important the rehabilitative environment for the well-being also of our PDLs and the general populace na rin.
Yes, well actually, of course, para sa mga offender, rehabilitation, the philosophy of rehabilitation, na pag nakakulong ka, dapat turuan ka paano, kung grade 6 ka lang, sana maturuan ka na paano yung high school, etc. Tapos, kung turuan ka ng skills para paglabas mo, marunong ka na mag-welding, etc. Those mga aspects siya ng rehabilitation. That's good. That's good for the prisoner. Kasi it gives the prisoner hope na pag lumabas ako dito, I don't need to resort to robbery. Alam mo, for me, ang crime is malaki, ang primarily social factor siya eh. Hindi
Yes.
yan personal factor. For me, and I'm sure all religions around the world, kasi student Catholic Action ako eh, all humans are good. I mean, we are born good, di ba? Hindi naman yan, we're born evil eh. So, naging bad ka along the way for so malaking bagay dyan yung social factors. Poverty, injustice, kasi ni-rape yung kapatid mo, gumanti ka, yung poverty, magnakaw ka. So, all these things, yun naman ang context nun eh. So, dapat may rehabilitation ka, pero may reforms din sa lipunan, di ba? Kasi yun naman, paglabas mo kung wala namang trabaho, discriminated against ka dahil ex-convict ka, hindi ka na bibigyan ng trabaho, di wala rin, di ba? So you could still end up committing crimes. So yun yung value ng rehabilitation dyan. One example, yung minimum age ng criminal liability. Matagal na debate yan sa Kongreso. Kasi daw ang mga minors daw ginagamit sa crime. Tapos dahil may batas na nag-exempt sa kanila from criminal liability, din prison sila doon ng sa DSWD, etc. Mas napaka-light, kaya they commit crimes. Kaya dapat taasan ng criminal liability na pag ganitong edad na, pwede na, kahit 16 years old, no, ganon, pwede na. Sabi ko, alam nyo, minor yan eh. Paano siya na-involve sa crime? Biniktima siya ng matanda. Tapos ngayon, siyempre may leader yan na sindikato na nag-ano dyan sa batang yan, di ba? So ba't niya habulin yung matanda? Kasi mahirap pa yun habul. Yan ang problema. Ayusin ng mga kapulisan. Paano nila mahabol ang sindikato? Actually, kung mahabol mo yung sindikato, hindi mo na kailangang habulin yung Hindi mo na kailangang habulin yung yung bata But dapat yun ang concept nila. Yes.
Yung root cause mismo.
So, yes. So, yun yung aking dyan na all these philosophies na bagamat sinasabi ng rehabilitation, restoration, the way they think, klaro agad sa akin, mga kasama ko sa Kongreso, mga tao sa Malacanang, na the way they think, you did the crime, you do the time. Tapos parang wala akong pakialam kung nagnakaw ka dahil mahirap ka. You stole a loaf of bread, di ba? So, you know the story ng loaf of bread. So, yeah, I guess yun siguro ang dyan sa rehabilitation. It's better that way. Ano naman ang advantage sa population? Well, a rehabilitated ex-convict is better than a non-rehabilitated ex-convict.
Yes.
Na-serve niya na ang 10 years in prison, lalabas na siya. Hindi si rehabilitated. Sabi ko nga dati, nagnanakaw lang siya ng cellphone. Ngayon, big time na siya na robber. Pwede mas lalong malala sa atin. So, nasa interest din ng populasyon, nasa interest din ng mamamayan at ng gobyerno in fact, na mag-rehabilitation tayo. Kasi sakit sa ulo ng gobyerno yan. Pag lumabas yan, tapos pumasok siya, 16 anyos siya. Paglabas niya, 20 anyos na siya. Mas magaling na siya na kriminal. Diba? Problema yun. Lalong congested yung prison natin. Gagastos ka pa ng malaki. Diba? So, tapos pag-iisip na naman, death penalty tayo as if it solves anything. Sabi ko nga, may death penalty sa Pilipinas. Pag magprotesta ka lang kay President Duterte, dissenter ka, marired tag ka na. Minsan nga, may EJK ka pa. But people dissent. People, because there is a basis for it. Eliminate mo yung basis for it. Diba? I mean, drugs. Ang solusyon sa drugs, kung mataas lang naman ang sahod ng ating mga mamamayan, makakain naman ang pamilya 3 beses ang araw, may sahod naman siya na 30,000 to 40,000 pesos a day, makapag-aral mga anak niya, tapos meron magsasabi sa kanya na, ito, 500 pesos, mag-deliver ka nga ng 1 gramong shabu. Siya sabihin niya, kaganda-ganda ng buhay ko. Diba? Pero kung kapit sa patalim at nasa ospital yung asawa, di niya alam paano bumili ng gamot, hindi niya alam kung paano kakain mga anak niya. Kakapit sa patalim yon. Alam niya na pag mag-deliver siya ng 1 gramong shabu, pwede siyang mamatay, pwede siyang matukam, pero wala ka nang magawa Kailangan mo ng 500 pesos So, baliwala yung threat ng death kasi ang tao, pag desperado na, sinusuong yung kamatayan para sa buhay ng pamilya niya rin. Kaya for me, rehabilitation is a better solution than all the other philosophies.
I see. And also, Attorney Neri, if you think about it, syempre bilang human rights lawyer, marami ka na rin kwento na naririnig kung bakit nila nagawa yun. And most of the time talaga, we can see na ang root cause is poverty rin talaga. And I think also, of course, if this one, masusolusyonan man tong poverty na to o mababawasan man, mabibigyan man ng importance also yung pag-aayos sa sistema sa loob, talagang magkakaroon ng pagbabago. Nakikita natin yung change pa lang doon sa tao and yung sa numbers na meron tayo doon sa loob also ng kulungan. And also, Attorney Neri, thank you so much sa paglalaan talaga ng time. Ang dami naming natutunan. And of course, I know that our listeners also enjoyed our topic today. And kitang-kita ko naman, napaka-fresh na rin po ng background natin dyan ngayon, Attorney Neri. Napa-change pa tayo ng spot. So, Attorney Neri, ito na rin
kasi
po.
yung anak ko kasi magla-lunch so sabi niya, tatay, kakain ako. So, sabi ko, lilipat ako.
Nahiya naman. Naman. Baka makuha pa sa cam.
So, salamat din. Salamat din sa inyo, Camille at Justin.
Thank you so much po. I hope talaga din na dumami pa ang mga human rights lawyer natin and ma-inspired sila syempre also dun sa kwento mo po from the age of 15 hanggang ngayon na you're one of our best lawyers na rin po. It's really great. And also, attorney, before we end our episode, as a token of appreciation from Yaka PH, we would like to present you and give this certificate na rin po that we will share on our screen. So, youth advocates for civilized and appropriate conduct towards persons deprived of liberty in the Philippines presents to Attorney Neri Colmenares, Chairman and National Union of People's Lawyers, this certificate of appreciation in acknowledgement of his generosity in sharing his expertise and experience in connection with his guesting on the Yaka PH podcast entitled Inside the Carceral Rehabilitative Environment over Incarceration, given this 22nd of May 2021. So,
Maraming salamat ha. Thank you. Thank
po.
you for that.
Maraming
Yes. Oh.
salamat din po, Attorney Neri. And also, this episode really helped us learn the importance of giving our PDLs a humane environment, alternative solution, and how vital the role of our government is. Siyempre, at the end of the day, iisa lang naman ang mithiin natin, pagbabago ng tao at ng sistema para sa ikaayos ang gusto rin natin lahat ng mga Pilipino. Thank you so much po, Attorney. Have a great
Maraming
day
salamat.
po.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So that's it, guys. A lot of us surely learned from Attorney Neri Colmenares himself. And of course, we want to know your thoughts about today's episode and what topics or issues focusing on PDLs would you like us to tackle. So feel free to leave a comment down below. You can also add there if you have a guest that you want us to invite on our next episode, okay? And lastly, please do support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel and click the bell button for you to be notified. You can also check us out on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are included down in the description box. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. This is Yaka PH, and until our next pod, stay safe.